Welcome to the NG9-1-1 GIS training series. This episode in the series is on using the topology inside the template geodatabases. Let's begin by talking about what a topology is. Topology are the rules governing the spatial relationships between features. Inside the Kansas NG9-1-1 GIS data model, features have defined relationships to other features in the same feature class and to the features in other feature classes. Road center lines, for example, cannot intersect each other. They also cannot intersect or cross the boundary of several of the polygon layers. Inside the template geodatabases, those defined relationships have been translated into Esri's topology rules and configured so that you will be able to test your data and make sure it's in proper alignment. Let's take a look at it. Inside the template geodatabase and inside the NG9-1-1 feature class, you will find the NG9-1-1 topology. We got really creative with the names here. The topology has to sit inside the feature class. I'll also give you fair warning that in order to edit a topology or to work with the feature classes that are participating in the topology, you have to have ArcGIS standard or advanced licensing. The basic license is not allowed to edit these types of features. In the old terminology, that means that you have to have Arc Editor or Arc Info. Arc View won't be able to do it. So let's take a look at the properties. The first tab we get, of course, has a name. The next tab has all the feature classes that are participating in the topology. Inside the Kansas NG9-1-1 data model, that is every feature class. Next to the name, you'll see a rank, and that rank is for accuracy. The point of the rank is that the higher the number, the more accurate the features are considered to be, each point of the feature. So the highest ranking feature classes are the ones that are dictated largely by legal description, county boundaries, municipal boundaries, and by definition also the authoritative boundary. Now, because of some of the other settings in the topology, these ranks don't have a lot of practical impact, but we've included them for the sake of accuracy. Now let's take a look at the rules. The rules are all of the different defined relationships that I spoke of earlier. For example, road centerline segments must not overlap each other. ESB polygons and ESZ polygons must not overlap. The road centerline must be inside the ESB polygons, meaning it can't cross the border. Address points must be inside the authoritative boundary. You can't have address points that are outside of the area that you're responsible for, that kind of thing. So let's talk about how to work with it. Pull this over. Now, adding a topology to ArcMap is pretty easy. Obviously, I have an empty map here. You can grab the topology itself and drag it over to the table of contents. What it will ask you at this point is if you want to add all of the feature classes that participate in the topology to the map. And you do. You're going to be working on fixing errors or evaluating your data to see if there are any. So it adds the topology, and it adds every single layer that is participating, even if there's no data in that layer currently. Now, the first thing you need to work with a topology is the topology toolbar. You can come up to Customize, or just right-click on an empty part of your title bar there, and scroll down and find the topology toolbar. You'll notice that everything is grayed out. That is because, in their infinite wisdom, Esri decided that you can't actually work with a topology unless you're in edit mode. So I am going to dock this toolbar, and let's get started. We'll start editing. And you see that the topology toolbar is now nicely lit up. Now, some of you may have worked before with what is called a map topology. And the map topology is a relationship between features that you define inside the map document only. You tend to work with that with these right here. The topology that we are working with, the geodatabase topology, is at the other end of the toolbar, or most of the things you do with it are at the other end of the toolbar. And that is where we are going to concentrate our work today. So the first step that you have to accomplish is to validate the topology. What that means is it's going to evaluate all of your feature classes and all of your features, and it's going to determine if they violate the topological rules that have been set up. There's a little button right here to validate the topology in the current extent, if you have a great deal of data, this is going to take a little while, and you just may want to plan on that. In this data though, it'll go pretty fast. So all of the pink dots that we have that have popped up here, and the little red area there, these are all errors. If you don't like the pink, you can always come over here and change the color, but we're going to leave it this way. So I could zoom around the map and look at each one of these individually, but I prefer to use the Error Inspector window. You bring it up with this icon right here. The Error Inspector window gives you a lot of information about the error that you're looking at. It allows you to look at a specific rule, errors that violate a specific rule. There's our listing. To look at errors or things marked as an exception, I'll explain that in just a minute. And to look in the visible extent or in the entire map, which is really one of the more useful features here. So let's hit search now, and we will find out that there are 358 errors in the data from beginning to end that need to be addressed, either fixed or marked as exceptions. To get to one of those, you just click on it, right click, and go to Zoom to. Now this little pastel thing on the screen, let me fix that just a little bit so that, there we go, that's a municipal boundary, and I'm going to turn off a few layers for us. There we go. So all we have now is roads and municipal boundaries. So this particular little municipal boundary is the city of Manchester in Dickinson County, and normally your editing workflow is going to be to have aerial photography behind this so that you can not only look at the center line and see that it doesn't continue in your features, but also can look at the aerial photography and make sure that it doesn't continue on the ground. So I happen to be quite familiar with this data, and I know that this is an exception. And what that means is that while the rule must not have dangles is a rule we have to have, this particular dangle is okay. It is an exception to the rule. So if I right click here, I have the opportunity to mark this as an exception, and that will just take it out of my list of errors. Notice that the map has immediately bounced to the next one for me to deal with. Now here in Manchester, I happen to know that all 3 of the remaining errors are exceptions. So to save myself a little bit of time, I can come over here and click Visible Extent Only and search now. And now I only see those errors that are on my screen at the moment. So I can highlight them all, right click on them, mark them as exception, and take care of them quite quickly. If you have an in-town area with a lot of cul-de-sacs or a place where a lot of roads stop because it comes up against a creek or other water feature, this is going to be a really fast way to help you get all of these marked appropriately. Remember also, when you mark them as exceptions and submit your data either for QA in the remediation project or for ongoing maintenance as it will go forward, those exceptions will go along with your data, and so whoever is looking at the data will understand this is not an error that needs to be fixed. This is something that the data steward looked at and deemed appropriate. Now let's take a look at a topology error that actually is an error. I have marked it already, so we'll hop over there, and this is a road segment that should be connected at this intersection. So I can double click on it, grab the end and bring it down to snap, and I have corrected the error. But you notice that the topology indicator, the error indicator, is still there. That's because it's going to sit there until the topology is validated again. So I can come back up to that same button we used initially, which is to validate in current extent, except our current extent is only these 4 lines in this intersection. So I hit validation and the error goes away. If you hit search now, because we're looking at things only in the visible extent, there are no errors to come up. To make sure your data is in alignment, you go through these errors one at a time or one area at a time, whatever works better for you, and correct them if they need corrected or mark them as exceptions. Now I will give you a fair warning that given the structure of the GIS data model, it's important that you work polygon errors first. Let's turn on the ESC layer and take a look at these 2 errors. So we can see that this polygon here has overlapped the others. We're going to double click on it to do an edit. And when you take a look, you'll see that there's not just the one vertex, but 3 vertices here. These 2 were generated by ARC when the topology was validated. Every place that features cross each other, it creates vertices. It helps it to evaluate the topology and do its math. It's going to be disconcerting for some people. After they run a topology, they see a lot of vertices that they didn't add, sometimes ones that don't seem to make very much sense. But they're things that are added by ARC to help itself kind of move along. So we're going to pull this vertex up, and I probably don't need these anymore, so I'm going to remove them. And we should be finished. So let's validate in the current extents. And we got rid of the error that we were working on, but it seems like we have another one. Now we could zoom in tight and take a look and see exactly where it's overlapping, but an easier way is to take a look at this feature that we thought was in pretty good shape. And we can see that there's one vertex here in the middle between all of these. And when you check the top one, you'll see that there are 2. Again, this is one that was added by ARC during the topology, so this is actually an error that ARC introduced on its own, trying to evaluate that other error. It doesn't mean that you're going to spend your whole time chasing your tail, but it does mean as you clean up one error, there may be other effects of that error that you have to address. So if I delete this vertex and validate, I now have no errors, and I can hit search now and see that. By the way, I do recommend that you go ahead and hit search now even if you don't see anything on the screen, because some of the errors can be very small, their symbology can be very tiny, and you might miss it. So just be sure, hit search now, and you know that everything's fine here on the screen that you're looking at. Okay, I also have a tool that I found doing the work for my own county that I want to show you because I think it could be really useful to some people. So let's hit search, and I have an error down here at the bottom that the road center line must be inside all of these things, and it's not. And the error location is right down here. There we go. So this is the error in question. I'm going to search just for the stuff here. I want to turn this off, the ESC, and go to the authoritative boundary. Now, since their boundaries match, I could have used either one of those, but the authoritative boundary is the big kahuna of the data model, so I tend to use that whenever I can. So what I have is a road that I actually have to zoom in fairly tightly and begin to see the difficulties with. If I take a look at the authoritative boundary layer, have to make that selectable. When I take a look at the authoritative boundary, I have quite a few vertices in here to worry about. And when I go back to the road center line, I can see the vertices there, but I can't see the vertices for the authoritative boundary anymore. And so I end up clicking back and forth, trying to match vertex for vertex, which is often what you have to do if you're not dealing with a straight line. While I was doing the work on my own county, I searched a little bit online to find something that would allow me to symbolize a layer with vertexes. That way, even though I was working with the center line and had these visible, that I could still see the ones for the authoritative boundary. And I found a tool for that. Let me turn it on here. It is called ET GeoTools, and I'm going to put the website that you can go to get it up at the end of the video. Let me pull this down here. And there are a whole bunch of tools in here. Now, ET GeoTools is actually one of 3 extensions that are available on the website, each one of them having a large variety of tools, some of them requiring a paid license and some of them free. But the one that I wanted for this is a free tool. Here we go, it's Draw Vertices. And if I click on that, it asks me to pick which layer I want to see the vertices for. And I want to see it for the authoritative boundary. It's kind of hard to see them right now, so let me move the road out of the way. There we go. You get these little black dots. Now, they're little black dots because that's how I have it configured. You can actually go into the settings of the GeoTools extension and change that to be a much brighter or different shaped symbology. But I like the black dots. And then I can come along and just match them. And I have a visual cue that helps me. Of course, snapping is going to get me right there, but I have a visual cue that helps me know where to go so I don't miss anything. Delete that one. And now when I validate, I have no error. I'll search to be sure, and I am good to go. And there are a lot more complex areas out there that have a lot more vertices to worry about, and in some cases, beziers or curved lines instead of straight ones between the vertices, and the trace tool can be really helpful for you in those situations, but still in the end, I like being able to see the vertex that I'm trying to match to, just to make sure everything is okay. So this tool was really a lifesaver for me as I was working our county data, and particularly moving around the border of the county and trying to match up roads and all the different polygons out along the border. I encourage you to go out and take a look at the extensions at ET Spatial Techniques. I use both the GeoTools and the GeoWizard extensions. I use the free tools on both of them, and they really help a lot with the editing and data work that I do. I'd also like to say thank you to Eonko from ET Spatial Techniques for giving his permission for me to use his tools in this video. This concludes the topology episode of the NG9-1-1 GIS training series. Our next video will be a Q&A video where some of the most frequent questions received by the GIS subcommittee are answered and demonstrated. Thank you for your time and attention.